when I was in Young Women's, the fundraiser I remember is something we called the Moonlight Dinner, where we would create this romantic outdoor dinner setting and then serve a nice meal. And the couples in the ward would buy tickets and be there. And it was nice. And as far as I know, it worked. We raised the money that we needed. Of course, back in the day, that was probably easier. And then when I was a parent and you guys were scouts, we started to do the flag fundraiser, and somehow we found out about it. I mean, it was already huge in Utah. And somehow we found out about the idea, and we were like, we could do it. There's a lot of members here in this town. It wouldn't be that hard. And we could raise some good money. And so I called some people that I knew in Utah that did that fundraiser and just found out from people how they were doing it. And of course, in Utah, or especially Utah Valley, you know, your wards are just a few blocks. And so the youth just follow a pickup, you know, as it goes around the block, and you post the flags. But anyway, we invested in it. We bought the flags, the rebar, and the scouts went out and sold the service. And we were doing 6 holidays. And after I got out of it, like after we aged out of scouting, they bumped it down to 3 holidays, which I thought was lame, but there were fewer young men. And it was chronically difficult to get families to do that on their holiday.
And they don't do it anymore?
No.
Wow, I didn't know that. They stopped doing it a while ago, I guess?
Yeah, and in the meantime, the young women start doing the auction. And the young women are having like crazy success, raising way more money than they need. And so the young men tried to beg their way into it. And the young women finally caved after, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. So then they were able to drop the flags.
To back up on the flags thing, so I think I was in Young Men's and Scouts when we started the flag thing. And the way I remember it was that we would basically own the contracts. Like we, as the young men, would own the contracts. And I remember having these little blue papers, these like half papers of the agreement. And they would get a copy, I would get a copy, and it would be, here's the holidays and here's how much you're paying. And it was, do you remember how much it was? Like $50 a year or something like that?
It was 30. It was 30. It was always 30. Even when they went from 6 holidays to 3, they kept the price the same.
So $30 for 6 holidays a year. And then all the supplies were purchased. And the contract was that we would come to your yard and we would hammer a stake into the ground and try not to hit your sprinklers. And then we'd put a flag pole with a American flag zip tied to it. It was just PVC pipe, right? So PVC pipe, American flag, United States of America flag zip tied to it. And we put it on that stake and then drive to the next house. And we would do that hopefully early in the morning, 6, 8, whatever, and then come back later that night and pick them up. So you would wake up as a customer, you'd wake up and automatically have the honorary flag on the right day at the right time for everybody to see without the hassle of having to deal with it. So pretty cool service. And then they went down to 3 holidays. And I do remember doing it on the holidays, and it was kind of a hassle because you were responsible for doing your houses. But then if you weren't able to do your houses, you had to have somebody else do it. Or if somebody else couldn't do their houses, you had to pick them up because you were always trying to trade houses and stuff. So it seemed like you always ended up doing more than just your contracts. And of course,
well, eventually they divided all the contracts up into 3 geographical areas. And so you had to have 3 families assigned to each holiday. And the family would like they just divided war boundaries into 3. And so They abandoned the whole you post your contracts thing, and they tried to make it more efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense. It also makes sense that each young man might have a quota of people he needs to have contracts. Not that they're assigned to him to do, but ones that he's responsible for renewing and whatever. Like, because each year you got to go back and talk to him. And so you might not be the one posting the flag on your contract, but you're the one responsible for maintaining it. And if you lose your contracts, then you'd go and ask around and see if you could get contracts to fill whatever the financial need was for you.
And I think the ward would request that each scout sell 10. So that would be $300. Yeah.
All right.
So
they were doing that, and then it was just kind of a hassle, like the parents ended up doing it more than the kids or something, or
we always participated and took 1 or 2 holidays, but we were never in charge. And I know that the guy that was in charge over the years, I think it was the same guy. I think it was just hard to find families that were available and willing to post.
yeah, that makes sense.
But at the beginning of the year, for Young Men's One Night, they would split up the leaders and the boys, and they would go to the houses of their contracts and renew, so that seemed doable. But I think they were thrilled to get rid of it when they finally did.
So then eventually they were joined to the young women's auction.
Yeah. Yeah. And so once that happened, that was probably 5 years ago. Once that happened, we started to go, well, no, we were going to the auctions when it was just the young women, right? Because it was like a ward activity. And my experience with it was that it was a chili cook-off contest. And so they would buy, like the youth organization would buy the hot dogs, buns, toppings, and maybe some chips and salsa. And then everybody brought chili. And so the meal was really taken care of by ward members. And then you were supposed to donate items that could be auctioned, whether it was like a household item or maybe a yard tool. And then, of course, all the desserts.
Who was donating them? The members were?
Well, the youth would be really involved doing that, but anybody could donate it. I always donated. I would donate like a homemade baby blanket or something.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I don't know where the auction idea came from, but I know at least 2 wards that are doing it, our ward and your ward, and I'm guessing other wards are doing it.
Yeah, I haven't kept track of like how many or where, but it seems to be pretty common. Like when people talk about it, it's not like it's a surprise. What? You guys do what? Like people are pretty familiar with the concept and why and whatnot.
We have a Long Branch in our stake, and they do an egg roll fundraiser every year, and the whole stake participates. I mean, they advertise throughout the stake, which is, I think, against policy, but they do anyway, and they're so good that everybody orders, and so they don't have a problem.
Like
and one of the wards,
like a tamale cell, where you're just like,
yeah,
like you're writing down orders, and then one night you just like make a whole bunch and give them to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other day there was a ward that had a yard sale in the church parking lot, and I think that was successful. Yard sale, bake sale.
And I've seen spaghetti dinners. Oh, maybe those were the schools that did the spaghetti dinners, where you would sell a spaghetti dinner for like $10 and then you'd show up and get it, or they would deliver it, for, in a little takeout thing.
So let me tell you my experiences with the auction. So the first time we went, I think we've only gone 3 times. The first time we went, we spent, between Dad and I, we spent $200.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's kind of like eBay, where you just get swept up in the bidding and people at the table are pressuring you. Come on, go higher, And so I wrote a note to myself, because I have a way of writing notes down so I can see them in a year and not forget them. And I wrote a note to myself, do not spend any money, or if you do, just a little bit of money. So the next year, I was very careful.
Do not
We
spend
probably spent 40, 50 bucks. And this last year we were careful too. But it's an auction. So it works on you psychologically. You know, there's a reason that auctions work.
Yeah, they're dangerous.
And the first time I really thought about it, 2 years ago, we had a young family at our table, a single mom who has 2 kids, who's on government benefits, raising her kids, and lives in housing authority housing. I mean, she does so well and is doing a wonderful job raising her children, but no disposable income. And it was her first time. She came to the auction. It was her first time. We had all eaten this very salty meal, chili, hot dogs, chips. I mean, it's salty for a reason, even if they don't do it consciously. And then they start auctioning the desserts. And it takes a few minutes for this mom, and she's a good friend of mine, to realize what's going on. And she says to me, is there no dessert that's part of the meal? And I said, no, you have to buy your dessert. Now, if I had been on my game, I would have just bid on something early on and just brought it to the table and we could all had some, right?
Yeah.
But when she realized that that was the deal and saw the prices and how a plate of brownies was going for $50, $60, they just left. I mean, that model was not going to work for them.
Yeah.
So that was the first time that I really thought about it. And then this last time, Dad was really looking around the room at the people that were not bidding. And some people have the resources, right? They just don't want the sweet treat, or they're not interested in playing the game.
Yeah, I think they learned the lesson that you thought of the first time around, and they were like, I've made too many mistakes. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, I'll make my $20 donation. I don't need anything for it.
Yeah.
But there are people, definitely people, who are sitting there who don't have the means. And there's one family in our ward, their oldest just hit AP camp age, and they don't have disposable income. And towards the end, you know, when there were like 3 or 4 things left, and they're raffling something that's not high end, you know, it's not one of the big luscious desserts. He grudgingly raises his hand like this, you know, like he knows at this point he needs to do his duty, you know, make a contribution, because now he has a child going to camp.
Yeah.
But it's killing him, right? Because he just knows.
Yeah.
It's not good for the budget.
So my experience with the auctions is fairly similar. Well, first off, going back to the flags, that model of fundraising is genius. I think it's just the wrong product. And so in terms of, like, probably talk about this in a minute, but like what the ideal fundraising model is, it's much closer to flags than it is to auction. And auction is hard. So I've been to like 4, I think. And the first one, I think we spent $300 on like just probably $400, or spent $300 on $40 of product, something like that. And I was like, yeah, you know, it goes to a good cause. And then I'm mentally like remembering all the other contributions, and I'm like, we just paid for like 3 girls' camps auction. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And then the next auction we did better. I think we spent like $100, but I'm still, it's still uneasy. Like things are weird. And then COVID hits, and I'm in ward council, and we're like, how are we gonna? We didn't do a fundraiser because of COVID. How are we gonna afford, the camps and whatever this year? And they're like, don't worry about it. We have plenty of funds. That's not a problem. And I was like, yeah, that's because these auctions are out of control. So then COVID ends, and then we have another auction, and that auction goes the same way. And then I have a friend tell me, like, I'm not going to those auctions anymore because they're just no fun. Like I can't afford anything. Like one cookie's going for $20, and I'm looking for a plate for like $10. And there's like random stuff. I mean, we have some people that are making homemade jewelry type stuff that's going for hundreds of dollars. And then there's like little, a plate of brownies is going for $50, and he's looking for something, for $20, and it just doesn't make any sense to him. And I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that is a problem. It's only fun, there's 100 people in the room, and it's fun for 20. And it's just flat out annoying for 20. And everybody else is kind of in between, like just there for the entertainment, basically. And I said something to the youth, and they were already thinking about it. So was the ward council, like, how do we do this different? And then they did the most recent one, which was an auction, young men, young women, and it was homemade items only, meaning that the youth had to make whatever it was that they were trying to sell. They had to make it by hand, whatever they were trying to sell, which means it was going to be really hard to get these really high priced items. The other thing that was an advantage, that 90% of the things, easily 90% of the things, were desserts. And there was a ton of them. There was like 20, 25, maybe 30 desserts, which is great because, you've got a whole spectrum. You've got the expensive desserts, the cheap desserts, and there's a bunch of cheap desserts. So the people who want to spend 10 or $20 on a plate of cookies have that option. There was lots of people that normally wouldn't be able to buy anything were able to buy something because there was a whole bunch of desserts. Somebody buy a plate of cookies, come to the table, and we'd all like share the cookies and stuff. So that was pretty cool. It's still a problem in my mind that needs to be solved because it still is not fair. There's still people that can't participate the way they want to. And the bidding usually starts high because it's a charity auction. It's not like, an estate auction. It's a charity auction. And so the bidding typically starts high, and we try to be generous. And it's usually plenty generous. And one of the comments that I heard that I thought was reasonable, even though the delivery may not have been great, was that there's some things that should not be auctioned off because there's no follow through, like a service of some kind, like, hey, I'm going to come mow your lawn and things like that. And that's really hard. And that whatever it is needs to be something that the youth are putting effort into. Like if it's dad's old hammer set and they're going to take that, like they're not putting any effort into auctioning off their parents' stuff. So it doesn't really make sense. And then, okay, so that's my take on the auction. And then I was going to change subjects. So
okay, hold on. We attended your auction, and during cleanup, I was walking back through the hallway, and one of the young women's leaders, sorry, it was two sisters. Two young women's leaders were standing there, and I heard one of them say, oh, I can't remember what she said about it, but she was talking about the people that couldn't bid. And it was, she said something like, well, the people that don't have the money to bid, it's all right. Like she was trying to make it okay.
Make it okay that they're able to contribute to the youth fund. Is that kind of?
Well, that they don't have the means to bid, to participate in the auction. Like for them, it's just award meal and entertainment.
So it's okay that they don't get anything.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could remember exactly what she said, but that was the conversation that she was having with the other sister, was this uncomfortableness of people that would like to bid and have dessert at their table, but
Or even just contribute and have something to show for it.
oh wait, that's what she said. That is what she said. She said people that can't bid can just make a donation. That's what she said.
Yeah.
And as I walked by, I thought, yeah, but not get anything for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, except a word activity.
They had, and a free meal, etc. So
our ward does silent auction as well. So they have tables around the culture hall where they have items like baked goods, but household items with a sheet of paper and a pen, and you can bid. Sometimes it's toys, sometimes it's a framed picture you don't want anymore, that kind of thing. And that is a place where, I mean, most of those items don't go for a lot.
And the silent auctions are nice because it doesn't have the same psychological game. But in terms of the dessert thing, if they just made one little tweak, it would help everybody. And that is that you have 30 things you're auctioning off. And then on the side, you have the little tiny miniature cupcakes or even medium cupcakes or whatever that are just for sale for $1 a piece.
Yeah.
So if you want something, a dessert, you just go over and you put down your $10 and you grab 10 cupcakes and you go back to your table.
Yeah.
Something as easy as that could solve some of those little problems.
But you want that sweet tooth working for you, right? So maybe you get your $1 cupcake at the end, then they finally open that up. Like if you didn't get your sugar kick, then come over and lay down $1 and you get a cupcake
at the end. Yeah. Okay, so here's me changing subjects. That the auction thing is hard. Like it's not a friendly, it's not a Christ-like activity. Like Christ isn't going to walk into the World Council and be like, we should have an auction. That would be so fun. Like an auction is not a gospel solution. It's a money solution. And I don't think it should be forbidden. I just think that there's better ways to do it. So here would be an example of my proposal between the flag option and the auction option. Gosh. Okay, anyway. So imagine you are selling contracts, but instead of flags, you're selling a baked goods contract. And so maybe it's once a month, you have a delivery at the door of a platter of cinnamon rolls. And you're selling that for let's call it $100 a year. So for $100 a year, you get one delivery a month of a plate of cinnamon rolls. Just randomly show up, surprise, or maybe it's scheduled, whatever. And maybe you have 3 options. You either get cinnamon rolls or brownies or a lemon cake. And those are your 3 options that just randomly show up to the house. Or it could be, whatever the thing is. So think of it in terms of a subscription service for something that is unique and manageable. And not unique in the sense that it's different every time, but like it could be a cereal box subscription. Like we as a youth group we're going to deliver one random cereal box to your house once a month, and it's going to be different every month, and you'll never know exactly what it is. We'll find like some unique stuff, whatever. It could be anything like that, but that way you solve the holiday problem. So it's not confined to holidays. Nobody's going to be constrained to a schedule that is conflicting with personal items. So you solve the schedule problem. You solve the auction, like weird environment problem. And you get the money, you get the ownership and the input from the youth, because the youth are either baking stuff or they're going out and getting cereal boxes, or they're, writing you a letter. Like that would be a good one for people who care about receiving letters. Like I'm going to write you a letter once a month. Different things like that. So they're giving input, and then of course you can still have the whole auction environment with like the food and the activity, where you're just having, it's just another fundraiser event without the auction, because you've already got the monthly gig. So now you've got once a year, you're doing like a spaghetti dinner where it's $10 for a plate of spaghetti, and you can raise money that way too. Like it's getting rid of the awkwardness of the auction while maintaining the fun of a party and the money of the flags, or the, you know, the money of the baked goods, whatever it is that's driving the money. So that would be my proposal, to make all of that fit together in a more Christ-like, productive way. All right, I'm pausing there. Any thoughts?
Yeah. That's an interesting idea. It would require management throughout the year, right? Like you talked about the service-oriented things that are auctioned off. Like we always bid on one young man coming to mow our lawn. And I'm the one that makes that happen, right? I come home, I write it on my to-do list, and it stays on my to-do list until he gets over here and mows the lawn. He's young enough that he needs the experience, you know, so that's part of it too.
But if you have, see, we already have a built-in accountability structure for a monthly activity, which is the mutual night. What do they call them now? The youth night, whatever, on Wednesday nights. So the first Wednesday of every month, all the youth get together and they bake a bunch of crap and go deliver it. Like that is built in.
Yeah, that works. That totally works. So something I also thought about is that back in the day, we used to do more fundraisers a year. And then at some point, when you were all in scouting, the church issued a policy that said one fundraiser a year. One fundraiser a year. And that's pretty much what it is now. I mean, our ward follows that. I don't know if it's still a policy. It might not be in the handbook anymore, but yeah. Our ward follows that. And also we don't do scouting anymore. I mean, I would like to do an episode on scouting, but we don't do scouting anymore. And scouting was expensive.
Oh yeah.
Like I remember when your aunt used to live in town and she was a den leader. She was the Webelos leader. And she was hyper focused on advancement and all the Webelo pins. And she was determined that the boys would get every pin in the year that they were in Webelos. And she just did this screaming good job at that. But then it becomes a problem. She's serving her ward and our ward, right? So she's got both wards, all the boys from both wards coming. And so I'm in scout committee and we're discussing finances, and her program is causing a problem because the awards are so expensive. I mean, that's one thing about scouting, is that the little pins and ribbons and patches and everything are expensive. And so the fact that she has this raging program becomes a problem for the scouting budget. And I remember telling everybody, I don't know what you're going to do if you're going to tell her to tone down and give her a quota, like you can't do more than one pin a month.
Okay. And is that why? So my next topic was actually going to be, why are we doing fundraisers at all? But let's see.
Okay, let me tell you another experience. One of my sister-in-laws is Stake Young Women's president nearby. And she had her first meeting and she had young women there. And she's like, we have to figure out ways to save money with inflation. It's just gone nuts. We cannot ask the young women to pay this much to go to girls' camp. We need to find places that we can cut. And she says, well, what about t-shirts? And the young women are like, you mean the shirt that I just wear for pajamas after girls camp? And she's like, yeah, maybe we don't need to do t-shirts. And then the other leaders that are in the room were like really resisting that. Like, oh no, that's tradition. We've done that for decades. And the t-shirts are so special and we collect them.
And they cost $2 a piece.
So because the young women were not interested in the t-shirts, they cut the t-shirts, and that really helped their budget. And then they moved on to other things, where they might cut. So there are things that we used to raise money for that we don't raise money for anymore. We used to raise money to build chapels.
Yeah.
We used to raise money for the ward budget. Like, you had to make a donation every year for the ward budget. And the church slowly over the years has picked up those things. I don't know if they'll ever pick up camp because it's expensive.
Well, it's expensive. See, this is where I haven't seen any of the finances and stuff. I don't know what this looks like, and nobody probably knows it, sufficiently to answer all my questions. But girls' camp is something like $100 or $200 per girl, right? It's not $1,000 per girl. And that's a lot of money for a fundraiser if I'm baking cookies. $100 in cookies that's some work. For a 14-year-old mowing lawns, $100 is, it's a pretty good amount of work. But for me as a tithing payer, $100 is not a lot of money. Like, I'm already paying $5,000 in tithing, $10,000 in tithing, whatever I'm paying in tithing, $100 is nothing. And so the idea that $100 should be a lot to a ward budget is kind of dumb. So there's something else going on that I am unfamiliar with, like for example, it's important for the wards to be fundraising just to maintain that skill set, just to maintain the ability to fundraise, to maintain the perception that the ward is responsible for raising funds for different things. Like, it's not that we actually need the money. Because like the girls are going to raise, let's say $1,000. Maybe let's call it $2,000. They're going to raise $2,000 to go to girls' camp. And everybody's going to put in the work and be like, yeah, we raised the money to go to girls' camp. That's great. How much did you raise? $2,000? Oh, that's all you needed? Because we're actually getting like $200,000 in tithing in this ward every year. So you guys should have just asked. Like, it's literally 1% of the budget goes towards girls' camp, and you guys would be set. You wouldn't ever have to do fundraising ever again. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then you start factoring in like third world situations, like are people doing the same thing in Australia and Africa and India? Like, how are they doing crazy fundraising? If so, why? Is it because they're not paying tithing and the tithing wouldn't be able to afford any of the girls to do any of this kind of stuff? Or is it because there's no camps in other countries, and so therefore if you have a camp you have to fund it on your own without the tithing, because there's some places that they don't have that option to even use their tithing that way? Or is it because tithing shouldn't be used for that in the first place? Is it because tithing is sacred funds?
Well, yeah.
And should never be used?
It's the widow's mite, right? It's the widow's mite.
Yeah.
Like, I remember one time, well, finish.
So is the tithing only to be spent on certain things and the camps fall outside of that? And if so, what is the proper way to pay for spiritual activities? Like, for example, if there's a youth super activity and they go to, where do they go? Medford or whatever they go, it's somewhere close that has a temple. So they travel half a day to do the super activity. They do a bunch of fun stuff, and then they go to the temple. Okay, so how much of that can be paid by tithing? Because I'm pretty sure if it was just a temple trip, we could pay for it with tithing. But is only the temple part paid with tithing and the rest of it isn't paid with tithing? Or can we pay for the whole trip since we're going to the temple, like there's things like that I don't know the answers to. But if answers could come up for all those little different questions, I'm pretty sure it would boil down to, do we need the youth to maintain the skill set of fundraising? Because that's probably the only reason we're actually doing it. Because there is money, like the hashtag make it a trillion. Have you ever seen that hashtag? Did you?
No, I can imagine it though.
Yeah. So the church is worth like $260 billion or something like that. And there's a hashtag trending of make it a trillion. But there's money around to do these things. So it doesn't make sense that the youth would need to raise funds for financial reasons. It's either a spiritual, guardianship of the funds problem, or it's we need the youth and the ward to maintain this skill set problem. So there's.
Hey, keep going.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
So just some thoughts. First of all, do you remember, I don't know how, it was a few years ago, the guy that worked for the church finance department leaked that the church had $100 billion.
Yeah.
And the church just scrambled, right? All of a sudden, I'm seeing all these posts on church social media about all the humanitarian work that they're doing and the partnering that they're doing, blah, blah, blah. They're trying to smooth it over. And it was a big deal. I mean, when that got leaked, it was a big deal. Everybody's like, oh, well, not everybody, but a few people. And it was national news.
Yeah.
And here we are a few years later, make it a trillion. I love how that dynamic is changing.
Yeah.
And I think it's your generation. It's your generation that's doing that.
Well,
it's like radio and all these crazy podcasts and media and church media outlets, unofficial, that are like, we have 100 billion. Is that all? Well, now that we have 200 something billion, we need to buy the Philippines.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I think Mormoner is a part of that, just lightening things up. That was huge. It just needed to happen.
That's the thing that is interesting to me, and this could probably be another topic we'll put on the list of like cultural movements and stuff. But there's an older generation in the church that scrambles to fix the narrative, and then the rest of us who don't care, we're not like changing that. We're not like helping change the culture because we never moved. It's not like we're like, oh, that was a good thing, but now we're going to do it differently. We were always like, why are people freaking out about this? Like, what? We knew the church was rich. They announced that back in the 1800s with Lorenzo Snow. He's like, we're paying our tithing now. We're out of debt. Like, yay, this is great. And so then all the finances are going well. And then we're supposed to be surprised that we have a bunch of money. So then there's like, okay, we need to make sure that the church is using it responsibly. Nobody's asking that. Why are we trying to show how we're using it? Nobody cares how the church is using them. That's not why we pay tithing. We don't pay tithing because we know the church is going to use it responsibly. And then they say, oh, we need to show them that we're using it responsibly, because if they find out we have a bunch of money that's just sitting there doing nothing, they'll stop paying tithing. Oh yeah, that's why we pay tithing, you old farts in the church office building. We pay tithing because we think the church needs our money. Yeah, that's what we think. No, that's not why anybody's paying tithing. So the idea that like the church needs to do anything to fix the narrative of the church finances is a joke. Like, you don't see the NBA teams going out and be like, just so everybody knows, we're buying new jerseys every year. So when you buy a ticket to the basketball game, that's what's paying for our jerseys. No, nobody cares. That's not why they're buying tickets. They're not buying tickets for jerseys. They're not buying tickets for new stadiums. They're buying tickets for the entertainment. We pay tithing because we believe in tithing, in the law of tithing. So anyway, yeah, that whole thing, we could probably do it. We should do a different episode. Let's not spoil everything.
Yeah. But back on tithing, when you talked about the sacredness of it, hold on, let me close the door. And I mentioned the widow's mite. had an experience that really drove that home. We used to have stake leadership meetings all the time, all the time. And I was in Stake Young Women's or something, and the Relief Society, like they would split us up: primary, Young Women's Relief Society, and then bishops and whatever. And a friend of mine went to the Relief Society room, and the Stake Relief Society presidency had made these cute little sheep. It was like a wood frame, and it had all this yarn somehow attached to it, a little sheep face, and it was Feed My Sheep, right? But they were pretty big, and they were sitting on the table, and everybody was leaving, so the room was almost empty, and they probably still had 8 or 10. And this friend's husband walked by the door, saw the sheep, and said, "So that's how we're spending the widow's mite?" And I just thought, that is a good perspective to have. I mean, you don't want to be fanatical about how tithing funds are spent.
I still don't agree with that, though. Like the widows.
But I think there's something there that has to be considered, right? I mean, you need to be wise.
So yes, but it's pretty manipulative to frame it like that, because it insinuates that the widow's mite is more important than the millionaire's 100,000.
Yeah.
It's not.
But it is provocative, right? The way he said that, it is provocative.
Why is it provocative? No, it's manipulative. It's manipulative. Because when they walk by and are judging how the funds are spent in terms of a widow's mite, they're not giving credit to the people who are not widows and have more than a mite. Because yes, if you have in your hand a widow's mite and the widow's in front of you, you're going to do and say things way different than if you have a lot of money from a very rich person paying a lot of tithing, right? Because the guy who has a lot of money is like, I don't care how you spend it. Like, just make sure that you're doing it right with the will of God, pray about it, whatever, just spend the money. I don't care. And the widow, her mite represents a tenth of her income, right? It's still the same tenth. She's not paying 15% because she wants extra. She's paying the same tenth. Now, if she truly is poor, and there's a lot of poor people that pay tithing, if she truly is poor, like in poverty, then it will be harder for her. But she's still motivated by the same thing that the millionaire is when they pay tithing. So anyway, yes, I understand like the sentiment, but it's completely manipulative. And I personally don't like that, because we've gotten better in our ward, because I've been able to recommend that we purchase things, and then I've actually been able to purchase things. And our building is 40 years old, no, 50 years old, and a lot of our stuff is old, and a lot of our stuff is old enough that it hinders us. Like, for example, a TV with a VCR. Like, let's just buy a $200 TV that has the built-in smart features so I can cache from my phone the videos for the Come Follow Me right now. $200. We didn't need to like talk about widow's mite. We didn't need an extra donation. We didn't need a fundraiser. We didn't need to like debate whether the TV was old enough or what. You just go out and buy it. Just go out and buy it. That's why the church has money, is so you don't have to worry about all the widow's mites and count up all the mites. You just go buy the stuff. Okay, and then there is guidelines like you're talking about, where you draw a line and you say, okay, this is extreme, but those are like in the thousands of dollars. Like, that's when you're renting thousands of dollars in bounce houses to throw some party at the church building. That's when your Relief Society has a birthday and you're like, we're gonna throw a Relief Society birthday and buy all the sisters diamond rings. Like that's literally how far you have to get before I'm gonna freak out about the church funds. And that the weird thing about that is that it is proportional to the tithing that is coming in. So for example, I bought a $200 TV for the ward, or somebody did. $200 TV for the ward. And I am a steward of those funds, and I know that that is within reason, you know, and if I have any questions, I can talk to the locals and see if I'm within reason. And if not, I'll get in trouble for it. But if there's a little branch out in the middle of nowhere that has very little tithing coming in, and they order a $200 TV off Amazon, and it's like $100 shipping to get it out to the middle of nowhere, like that's a huge mistake, because you have a responsibility to guard the funds of not only your branch, but also all of the other branches and wards that you're pulling money from in to support, which doesn't mean don't do it. It doesn't mean don't buy the expensive TV for your little branch. It means that you better do it carefully. I suggest that you talk to somebody, talk to Bishop, talk to stake president, district president, whoever it is, and make sure that you've thought about the pros and cons and you're really being careful with those funds, because it is out of balance with what you're contributing. I mean, that's why when you go to a third world country, they build church buildings, they build meeting houses, and they're not giant stake centers with wood floors and air conditioning, because the people that are going there are going to be 20 to 100 people in size, and they're all making like $20,000 a year. And it doesn't make sense to plop $1 million building down on people that aren't able to maintain it and so forth. All right.
So one other thought, when I was in the Stake Young Women's, we would still do the big activities, right? The super activities, the big youth conferences, and so on. Right after I got released, the church direction changed, and they requested that there be this family filter, that all activities, but especially youth activities, be considered through a family filter. What's the effect going to be on the family? How many days will the mother be away, the father be away? How much fundraising will there need to be? And so on. And so all the level of activities just went, ooh. And it was kind of this minimalist era. But it didn't last long. It only lasted maybe like 2-3 years. And then the church changed their guidelines and said, we need super activities, testimonies, and gave extra money to wards according to their numbers of children, youth, and YSA. Like if you had a lot in those demographics, you got extra money just so you could do these bigger activities.
Yeah.
Now that wasn't them paying for camp. You know, that's always been this separate fundraiser thing, but I really paid attention to the family filter because it came in right after I left, and I thought that would have been nice. It would have made my life a lot easier, but it didn't last long. And I think we've been in the super activity, big youth conferences. I think we've been in that phase since then. That's probably been 20 years.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value to them, but I'm like fundraising in general, I do not believe is a skill set. I think you're basically training people to be con artists. Like when my daughter was in public school for a year, they had some stupid candy bar fundraiser come home, and you're like selling candy bars for $1.50 a piece. And I said, take your candy bars back to school and ask them how much money you're supposed to raise, and I'll just pay it. I don't need you learning how to sell candy bars to friends and family. That is not a skill set. Like you begging for their contribution is not a skill set. And so that she was like 5, right? 4, because she was only in public school for a year. And then ever since then, with the homeschooling and stuff, it's been much more like, oh, you want to buy something, you want to go somewhere, you want to do something, okay, we'll pay for XYZ, but the other stuff you're going to have to pay for. How are you going to earn the money? So then they're, the working skill set is, in my mind, way different than the fundraising skill set. They're not. There's not even like a Venn diagram overlap. They're completely different. All right, we're wrapping up. I think I Got all my T's crossed. So we'll see you on the next one.
All right, Denton, thanks.